I don't think this guy would be welcome in Australia.
I don't think he would.
What is going on, guys? And today we're going to be reacting to a video that has been recommended to us. That video is top 10 reasons, not capitalised, not to move to Australia. If you don't know, we are two Brits who live in Australia. So I'm wondering, if we watch this, are we going to be agreeing or disagreeing with some of these points? So maybe we go through step by step, say, do we agree, do we not? If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe. It really does help the channel. And let us know, is there anything else you want us to be reacting to in future? Before we get into the video, I'll show the creator's name on here. The original video will be in the description as well. So if you want to go and check out the original video, please do, as we will be pausing and talking through it. And sometimes people don't like that, but it is a reaction. So let's get on with the video.
G'day mates, how you going? Because today we're talking about the land down under, Australia.
Instantly,
American.
I'm going to have to pause. American. That might be a problem. I didn't realise it was an American. I thought it might be an Aussie. Get back into the video. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah. Is it a country? Is it a continent? Do kangaroos really just roam freely about? Sounds like fake news to me. But it's not. The world's 6th largest country is a giant 3 million square mile island continent stuck between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. And this strange geographic location is what makes Australia such an ecological and biological anomaly with so much diverse nature and wildlife unique only to the country.
Nothing negative?
From Tasmania to the stunning beaches to the outback rainforests and Great
Tick.
Barrier Reef,
I love all this.
There is so much natural beauty to be found here. But not only is the nature stunning, Australia is also home to a few highly advanced cosmopolitan cities, with the two biggest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, routinely ranking among the top 5 best cities to live in the world. Speaking of which, let's hit 5,000 likes and I'll do a video on the top 10 best cities to live in the world. Anyways, it isn't hard to see why the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have lived here for over 60,000 years. Wow. Of course, the British also did their imperialist thing and claimed the continent in 1788 as a penal colony for their convicts, but Australia eventually gained independence in 1901. And since then, the land down under has become a country with one of the highest qualities of life, a great healthcare and education system, incredibly low crime, vibrant and welcoming residents,
all amazing
excellent
stuff.
economy
Even
with
the pelican.
hardly any poverty. Nonetheless, only 25.5 million people actually live here, and less than 100,000 of those are U.S. expats.
Wait, there must be a reason only 1,000 to 4,000 new Americans immigrate here each year, right?
Well, maybe you'll find out in my top 10 reasons not to move.
Very American.
To Australia.
Very American.
Very American.
Number 10.
Number 10.
It gets hot. Contrary to popular belief, most of Australia isn't all perfect year-round temperatures. Well, unless you're in Sydney or Perth, but even those get some bad days each year. And although a few cities on the southern coast in Tasmania actually get hit by really cold fronts coming up from Antarctica, the real issue in most of Australia is the heat. There is a reason nearly 90% of Australians live within 50 kilometers of the coast. The heat makes the rest of the country basically unlivable, especially in the outback where temperatures can reach 50 degrees Celsius. That's 122 Fahrenheit. Heck, it gets so hot in the desert here that the opal miners back in the day ended up building an underground settlement called Cooper Pedy to protect them from the heat. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, so Cooper Pedy is a place that Shannon told me about where people just live in the cave systems.
They live there?
I don't know whether they still do or whether it's more of a tourist attraction and they used to. But there is homes, and I swear I've seen some for sale, so maybe they do. But yeah, it's a place that we need to get on the list to go and do for sure. For sure we do. But about it being too hot, it is. A lot of it is probably inhospitable, understandably. Yeah. That's a fair point. But the bits that aren't, which is a massive area, like you said, the whole coast region is pretty much populated, is a huge populated area.
And I think air conditioning and stuff like that makes things bearable these days.
From cars to shops to houses.
Yeah, going back years ago, obviously it wouldn't have been comfortable, especially in those summer periods, but yeah.
Let us know, guys. What do you think on that? That's the first point anyway.
Sure. And even though the cooling effects of the ocean make the coastal areas more livable, most of the cities will still get days above 40 degrees Celsius during the summer. Add in some of the most beautiful beaches in the world with tons of sunny days to enjoy, and the fact that you're pretty darn close to the equator, and it isn't hard to see why 2/3 of Australians are diagnosed with skin cancer.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I'd be remiss to not talk about that other thing the heat and sun cause as well. Bushfires. You've probably already heard about the wildfires that have decimated 46 million acres and killed 451 people this past year alone. But sadly, it's not the first, and it definitely won't be the...
Saying that again, though, everywhere that is, there are places in LA, the bushfire in LA that's just been recently,
Yeah, and it's happening more and more, isn't it?
And how many people in America would want to live in LA?
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that still want to live in LA even though there's bushfires. So maybe it's a point I can understand what they're saying, but it does happen. It's something to be aware of, but
I wouldn't say it's a reason not to live
full
here.
reason. Yeah.
The last. Number 9. It's isolated. You might have wondered why so many Australians have left their beautiful homeland that seems a lot like paradise to most Americans. But the reality is that many Aussies feel trapped, lonely, and isolated from the rest of the world. And while you may think that's silly,
do you guys
just
feel
hop on a plane and fly to a nearby country like Indonesia or Singapore, it actually isn't so simple. Most Australians live in the southeastern part of the country, so a flight to anywhere other than New Zealand means crossing the giant continent of Australia and then some, or just the entire Pacific Ocean. Basically, even those close countries end up being anywhere from a 6 to 10 hour flight away. It's at least a 14-hour flight if you're going to the US, and you should expect to spend over 24 hours in airplanes and airports if you want to visit anywhere in Europe. And before you comment,
so what if other countries are far away? Australia's huge. Just
sorry to pause it, but also, like, coming from the UK, I don't think that most people that do have other countries on the doorstep utilise it. They go to the same places. Obviously, you do get some people that can, but I think when you've not got something, you want it. When you've got it, you're not bothered about it. That's it's simple. Yeah. It's simple as that.
That's been something that a couple of people have mentioned over here. Or you like the luxury of having Europe, but. We did travel around a lot of Europe before we came over here, but there are a lot of people that just go to, like Cody said, the same spot every year, just to that same hotel to sit there and drink and be by that pool. They don't really utilise the cultures as such and going around and going to Rome, going to, Paris. They don't usually do that. I wouldn't say
Not
Brits,
often.
this is Brits in particular.
It's becoming more of a thing now because obviously travel is a lot more affordable these days. Well, kind of.
Yeah.
But
not every Brit does it though. Like I want that to be a thing. Like coming from Brits, obviously this is an American, and we're speaking about Australia, which is really confusing. But let us know. Do you guys feel too isolated? Obviously, plane travel's quite far, but if it's what you're used to, a lot of Aussies that we speak to go, "Oh yeah, we'll get in a car and drive for like 5 hours, 10 hours." Yeah. For Brits, that's mental, but. So does the travel feel as long when they're used to travelling as far?
Yeah,
I kind of just, if you've never known any different, you just crack on. I feel like a lot of Aussies aren't sat there complaining. I feel like they're like, we just do it.
Yeah.
Just crack on.
Just explore that.
Well, the thing about that is that Australia isn't just isolated from other countries. The cities here are actually really isolated from each other. The land down under is the 3rd least densely populated country in the world, with just 3 people per square kilometer. And it only has 5 real cities with metro populations over 1 million residents. So, as I'm sure you can guess, the population centers are very spread out, and most of Australia is very remote. For example, the 2 closest big cities would be Sydney and Melbourne, but they're still an 8.5-hour drive apart. Melbourne to Brisbane's an 18-hour drive, Adelaide to Darwin's a 31-hour drive, and Sydney to Perth is a 41-hour non-stop drive.
So big.
Pretty much nothing in between.
Sydney to Perth.
Number 8. Time zones.
Be a great adventure.
Speaking of isolation, Australia isn't just physically isolated from other countries. You're also going to have trouble keeping in touch with your family or friends back home unless they live somewhere in Asia. Australia is an entire Pacific Ocean away from the US and 2 continents length away from Europe, so the time zones are practically exact opposites. Now, Australia has 3 main time zones.
Just a quick one on that point for us. when our family are waking up, we're usually going to sleep. We can talk then if they're going out to work.
Well, we're working with UK clients as well.
UK clients.
Yeah, in the evenings.
It is possible.
Yeah.
It is possible. That's a bit negative, that one. Maybe other certain time zones. And then obviously the other way around. If we're, like you say, going up or going to bed or getting up, if our family are going to bed or waking up, the reverse. We do usually find a way to have a conversation, so not majorly a problem for us.
And again, if you were back home, how often do you really speak to these people? How often do you really see these people?
True.
You can actually go longer. I think with being apart, sometimes it makes
you make the effort.
You make the effort.
Yeah, definitely you do.
So obviously you don't physically see them, which is a loss, but
you can't get a hug, but you can definitely, like you said, speak face to face, which is something you do more being so far apart. So it can sometimes bring you closer in a weird way.
But for the sake of just showing how different the times are, when it's 7 a.m. in Sydney, it's 10 p.m. in London. And when it's 6 a.m. in Perth, it'd be 6 p.m. in New York. I get that this is just more of an inconvenience than a huge deal, but it can get pretty tedious trying to schedule a call with your international family and friends. Number 7. The internet sucks. If you finally do manage to get a hold of your family and friends, time zones might not be the only thing that get in the way. Because even if you schedule that Zoom call perfectly, the internet might just randomly cut out or start lagging, and by the time it's fixed, it's probably the other person's bedtime. Sure, the United States isn't anywhere near the best when it comes to internet speeds compared to most developed countries, but it's light speed compared to Australia, which is only ranked as the 43rd best country for internet. And no, I don't just mean that on average it has relatively slow download and upload speeds. I mean the most expensive plans still disconnect or lag frequently, and a lot of the plans actually have data caps. Who does that in...
So, just for a bit of perspective, we've been making 5 videos a week, and these video files that we record for YouTube are 4K footage. These are heavy files. Again, the internet where we are isn't the best at all times, and we understand that. We knew that before coming to live here. All it means you do is it's a trade-off. So we've managed to upload 5 videos a week, 4K footage, and the way I do it is every evening that we filmed footage, I get in bed that night, sometimes at 12 o'clock at night, and I'll sit there and edit it because I know that I need to get it edited and uploading overnight. So then when I wake up in the morning, I can do the last little finishing touches, but it's all uploaded online. So you do find a system and a way to work with it, and also when you've got gorgeous scenery, gorgeous views, amazing people, a lovely country, I'm not sitting here complaining about the internet. Do you know what I mean? So
it's a bit of a first world problem, isn't it?
It is.
Having internet issues.
Definitely. And if you make it work, it's not the best, but it still works. So again, I kind of understand the complaint. Not one that I would complain about.
Anymore. A 200 gigabyte a month plan in Brisbane with download speeds only up to 12 megabits per second will cost you $65 a month. And don't even think about going over, or you'll have to pay an outrageous fee, and your internet speeds will slow down to 256 kilobytes per second. What developed nation has any internet speeds under 1 megabit per second? That's just ridiculous. Number 6. Everything wants to kill you. If the frustrating internet speeds are enough to make you want to go on a digital cleanse and take a camping trip out in the wilderness, well, don't, because literally everything here is trying to kill you. Yeah, Australia's home to box jellyfish, stonefish, tons of poisonous snakes, and
I'm going to have to do another pause.
Spiders, these are not an issue.
But these things are around. Let's be real. You do have to be cautious, you do have to be careful. You can't just go walking through the bush just without any, like you said, we have compression bandages on us when we're going out and around. We have tick treatment and stuff in case we get a tick on us. We have a tick spray. We have these things to just be cautious. But it is that, being cautious. You can walk down a street and there's not just going to be a crocodile and then a kangaroo that kicks you in the face, and then a spider that jumps on you and a snake jumps on your face. You can get by without it, but you do have to just be cautious. If you're driving at night through a flat area and you have your headlights on, be careful of kangaroos. It's these things that you do need to be careful, but...
Well, the crocs, they're up north. They're only in a small area, really, of the whole country.
Yeah. And a lot of the snakes and spiders aren't like in direct, like populated areas as such. But if you go out into the wild, of course you're going to see these things.
Yeah.
But they don't want to bother you. Snakes aren't going to just jump and attack you. Maybe the browns will, but I mean...
Yeah, maybe the browns
I think we've lived here long enough that we're just a bit cash about it. But yeah, like you said, we've been here 8 months and we've not had a dangerous experience yet. We understand people do, but just be cautious. I just don't... I'm not one for complaining. I'm complaining about his complaint.
I did get bitten by or stung, should I say, by a bull ant once. That was awful.
Yes. Yeah, that wasn't nice, but you know, carried on though that day.
Exactly.
You carried on walking.
Yeah.
True, Aussie. True, Bollo.
Spiders, blue-ringed octopuses, stingrays, sharks, and the largest saltwater crocodiles in the world.
They are pretty big.
Wait,
yeah,
did
cool.
you think I was done? No, I'm just getting started. Because kangaroos, dingoes, cassowaries, emus, cone shells, and drop bears can all pose serious threats. Okay, well, maybe not the drop bears since they don't actually exist, but the rest of those animals have all taken human lives. Australia just isn't a place where you can spontaneously go for a hike or swim without being very cautious of your surroundings at all times.
Yeah, of course.
People do go
story
swimming.
of a man being snatched out of his boat in a river by a giant crocodile while he was just going fishing with his family. Although don't get too worried, because you're actually more likely to die by falling off a horse than from one of the deadly critters here. Just be careful and respect the animals whose homes you're visiting. Except for kangaroos. While you might think they're so cute and cuddly, they can be vicious, and many Australians actually see them as pests. The only reason the country hasn't declared war on them yet is because the kangaroos outnumber Australians 2-1, and the Aussies don't want a repeat of what happened in the Great Emu War of 1932. Spoiler alert, the emus won. Number 5. Bad drivers. While many Aussies try to blame the kangaroo and their lack of road sense as the reason for so many car accidents, only 7,992 kangaroo collisions actually occurred in 2019, which was less than 5% of the total automobile accidents in Australia.
Yeah,
so maybe the drivers should start taking a little more responsibility. Now, of course, every town, city...
I don't think this guy would be welcome in Australia.
I don't think he would be.
He's complaining a lot.
I must admit, I think there's bad drivers everywhere. Before we moved to Australia, I was complaining a lot about the driving in the UK. I always thought it was because there was just too many cars on the road, way too populated. But coming here, there's a lot less cars on the road, but then there is still a lot of bad drivers. But I just think there's bad drivers everywhere.
There's bad drivers everywhere. Bad drivers. Do you know what the big thing is? There's a lot bigger cars here.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people driving bigger cars, especially where we are, maybe not in the cities. If somebody lives in Sydney, Melbourne, they're probably a bit more city car compact. But because we are kind of semi-rural, a lot of the guys in the big utes, the big trucks, and they kind of drive a bit rambunctious because they've kind of got the power on the road. They're a bit more like, that's natural to come with big cars. So maybe that's a bit more common. But again, like Cody said, there's bad drivers everywhere.
Yeah.
Again, like I said with the animals, you've got to be cautious.
Yeah.
State and country is going to have its fair share of bad drivers, but the drivers in Australia are really some of the worst in the world. And I'm not just saying this as some American trying to diss Australia, because I love Australia, and even people from Australia will admit that the drivers here are terrible. In fact, Aussies actually upload more videos of illegal and bad road behavior than any other country. Number 4, it's expensive. Aside from the aforementioned incredibly expensive internet, pretty much everything else here is expensive too. Yeah. Because while Australia is big, it's still an isolated island, so a lot of things have to be shipped over long distances to get here. Of course, the cost of living varies based on location, with it generally being cheaper the farther you get from the coast and major cities, but Australia as a whole is pretty pricey. Granted, it is balanced out by the decent job pay, since Australia actually has the highest after-tax minimum wage of any country.
There you go.
Top 10
you just missed a good fact, though. I think you just said after tax, they've got the highest minimum wage. Yeah. So, you do get paid high amounts. We know a lot of people that have lived here for a while from the UK, and they say, it works out about the same. Some things are more, some things are less. It kind of equals out.
Quality of life, I think. A lot of guys from the UK as well, like, if you come from a place where it can be quite dismal and sad, to come to a place that is so amazing, like, view behind the camera is actually insane. As we're looking, the sun's like cascading down onto a big valley of trees and it's gorgeous, but, you know, you're kind of willing to, as an outsider, come and pay that to live here because it feels like a luxury. I can understand maybe as Aussies, they've had
they've only seen it increase.
A lot of Aussies have commented and said, you know, like, oh, it's not right, this and this and this, because they're so used to living here, and I can understand that side of it. But as an outsider, hello.
Hi, Picco.
As an outsider, like you said, that's our personal opinion, that it is very, you know, it's a very nice place to live. Also, you kind of pay it.
Can we just talk about the fuel prices in Europe and the UK in particular? They're absolutely
car insurance.
crazy. Car insurance, crazy.
There are these things, yeah, they do fluctuate. Like
yeah.
gas bills in the UK are so astronomical that people can't put the heating on over winter if they don't have enough money. Whereas here it might be like the electric's higher because the air comes on more. So, you know, pros and cons to many different countries.
Average income at around 64,000 US of any country, and a top 10 average income at around 64,000 US dollars per person per year. But then again, this also just creates an expensive cycle since the high minimum wage means high production costs, which means it's cheaper to import goods.
We obviously, as you know, we work with a lot of small businesses, and we do see patterns that they struggle to get staff, especially Australian staff, because they're so expensive. They require really high salaries. So yeah, I can understand that as an issue, but as a business owner, it's hard to keep kind of production moving.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
But imported goods are expensive, and well, that's just economics. And even though most of the wages are livable, they're not necessarily enough to buy a home, especially in Sydney or Melbourne, where the median home values are 1.15 million and 855,000 Australian dollars respectively. That's nearly 820,000 US dollars for your average home in Sydney.
Yeah.
Number 3, places close early. To add on to the fact that things are expensive here, it might be difficult to even buy said things if you're working normal hours, since most shops, stores, and restaurants usually close by the time the sun sets during the week. And if they operate at all on the weekends, they're probably going to have...
Did look like Byron. But also, is this the case everywhere? Because if you live like near in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, that's not the case. And rural areas, it's the same in the UK. Like, we're like... our auntie and uncle live in Cumbria. Like, that's rural. Places shut early. You're not going to see shops open past 5 p.m.
It's true.
So I think, to be honest, it depends on just where you are.
Placement, definitely is placement where you are. You've got to make sure that if you are going to move to anywhere, not just Australia, you do your research before you go. You know what place you're moving to, and that it suits your lifestyle.
Yeah.
We love greenery, going outside, chilling out of an evening, not going out and partying. So here worked really well for us. But if we're looking for a bit more active and kind of boisterous lifestyle, you go for a Sydney, you go for a Melbourne, you go a bit more populated area.
Don't get me wrong, the cafes do close early, and that's something that we still can't get used to. However, if we didn't work nights, that wouldn't be an issue, because you'd be up, you'd be in the cafe early.
Yeah, true.
You won't want to go to a cafe past 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Good point.
Sometimes we have to, just because we do get up late, because we work late. So, yeah.
Give and take.
A lot of these reasons are really relevant, to be honest, but
have even more limited hours. This one isn't a huge deal once you're used to it and plan accordingly, but it can be a big culture shock if you're coming from the States where there's an abundance of 24-hour businesses. Now, to be fair, a few places do actually stay open later if you're in a big city like Sydney, Brisbane, or Melbourne, but it's hard to buy things past 5 or 6 p.m. pretty much anywhere else. Number 2. Poor mental health services. Despite their vivacious exterior, Australians usually keep their feelings to themselves. It's just not normal to talk about personal problems here, and the mental health of the nation is suffering for it. Now, there are free care options available for at-risk individuals, but since there's a shortage of psychologists, it's left many other people...
Can we just talk about how bad the mental health services are in the UK?
Yeah, they're overrun.
And because the lifestyle is so... like, not the best, people suffer more. At least here you've got sunshine, people do yoga, people do meditation.
People are
it's so common.
People are a lot more aware of the
actual like hospital kind of service is available. Like, it probably is restricted, but
let us know with that though, in regards to do Aussies not really speak about it? Is it a bit more of a problem? I wasn't fully aware of that, so if it is, we've learned something from the video. But
do you reckon it's because they just kind of crack on? They're very much like, how's it going? But they don't really get into the problems, do they? They're very much like, they just want to go out, have a good time, probably forget about the problems, maybe.
Brits are a bit like that, though, aren't they? Brits don't really... They say stiff upper lip, which is like a British saying, isn't it? Stiff upper lip and just kind of...
Just get on with
like,
it.
A lot of Brits, like, for example, they'd be eating a meal. If it's not a good meal whilst they're at a restaurant, they go, oh, it's not good, this, to the table. And then, like, if a waiter came over, asked if everything's okay, you go, yeah, it's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. Do you know what I mean? Like, people don't like to complain and moan.
I don't think Aussies do that, though.
Maybe Aussies don't. I don't know. Let us know anyway. Let us know.
people with no one to talk to about their problems unless they pay a lot of money out of pocket. And even then, many doctors and citizens as a whole aren't well educated in the case of mental health here, so good therapy isn't easy to find. 1 in 5 Australians between the ages of 16 and 85 have experienced mental health illness, and over 20% of young Australians struggle with depression or anxiety. Maybe the mental health issues here actually contribute to that risk-taking, fearless reputation most Australians have earned themselves, since it's kind of the culture here to just suck up your problems and pretend you're always having a good time. Number 1. The immigration process is very difficult. While visiting Australia is as easy as having a valid passport, filling in an online application, and paying a small fee, becoming a permanent resident is incredibly difficult for U.S. citizens. Now, for young Americans eager to explore the world, Australia does offer a program known as the Working Holiday Visa, which allows you to live in the country for a year or two in exchange for paid work. But if you want to move here permanently, there are a lot of requirements, such as a confirmation of funds, a skill set assessment, proficiency in English, a health exam, no criminal record, and being under the age of 45. For the most part, you either have to have a lot of money saved up and plan to start a business in Australia, or offer a highly desired skill that no available Australian worker has. So while it's definitely easier to move here than to certain countries in Europe, it's still very difficult for your average American to immigrate here permanently, and that's probably why only 1 to 4,000 Americans do it each year. I'm sure more would if they could.
Well,
interesting.
That is a roundup on top 10 reasons not to move to Australia. That last one's probably valid and something that, not that we've struggled with, but something that we've experienced. You know, it is very hard to get into this country. But from all the negatives that he's just said, if it was such a bad country, people wouldn't be wanting to try and move here. And I'm sure the visa and the citizenship test would be a lot easier if it was such a bad country. It's a lovely place. We're currently only here for our 3-year visa, but if we could one day call this place home full time, I would be very honoured. And I think many other people would as well. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this video. Maybe it was aimed more towards Americans than Brits. This is our British take on this video. Let us know your thoughts. Is there anything else you want us to react to? Let us know in the comments section. But as for that, I think that's everything today.
I think it is.
Just wanted to say thank you very much to the members. Show your gorgeous names on the screen now. Thank you for all your support. Really does help us when we're trying to do our adventures. Today's just been a reaction. But next time we see you, I'm sure we'll be adventuring somewhere. We shall see you in the next one. Subscribe if you've not already. And adios.
Bye.